How does a small country overflowing with forests, oil, and the Atlantic tide end up poor? How do two men from the same family tree hold the nation in their fists for more than half a century? And maybe the hardest question of all, how does hope at independence turn into fear, silence, and missing money? Today, we are walking into the long, painful story of Equatorial Guinea, a place with enough natural wealth to lift every citizen, but where power, brutality, and greed shaped a completely different reality. This is not a fiction. These events happened. Today, I'll explain them to you like you and I are having a conversation. When Spain prepared to hand over the territory in 1968, they needed someone they believed would protect their interests. That man became Francisco Macías in Guema. He wasn't rich, he wasn't from a powerful family, but he understood politics well enough to win the support inside the country. And he ended up defeating his rivals to become the first president of an independent Equatorial Guinea. At his very end, people were hopeful. A new nation, a new chance. But nobody knew same man would soon turn the country into a horror movie. Not long after taking office, Macías changed. Opposition voices were silenced. Political parties were banned, and even churches were shut down. He wanted to be the center of everything, even declaring himself a kind of divine figure who could not be questioned. People who disagreed with him disappeared. Some were publicly executed. One of the most infamous moments was when about 100 people, including ministers, were killed during crackdown. Soldiers obeyed because refusing him meant death. Eventually, even his own circle had enough. In 1979, members of the military, led by someone extremely close to him, rose against him. Francisco Macías was captured. He faced a military court and was found guilty of mass killing and destruction of the nation. He was executed that same year. Pay attention, because this part is very interesting. Even after his execution, nothing changed, because the man who replaced him carried the same last name. Who is this man? He was no other than his nephew, Teodoro Obiang. Obiang grew up inside the system, studied in military schools, and worked closely with the state security institutions. When he led the coup in 1979, many hoped he would rebuild the country. Spain quickly recognized him, and even the Soviet Union and other nations accepted him diplomatically. For a moment, people breathed easier, but that moment was short. Soon after taking power, Obiang began tightening his grip. He always ran as the only meaningful candidate, sometimes literally the only one on the ballots. He held power and nobody could seriously challenge him. Before oil was discovered, the country suffered. Government services remained weak, corruption ate resources, and the country stayed among the poorest in the world. Then, everything changed in the 1990s. The country found oil. The arrival of oil in the early to mid-1990s was the moment everything in Equatorial Guinea shifted. Before this discovery, the country was largely forgotten on the global stage, a tiny former colony with little influence and an economy that depended almost entirely on small agricultural exports and aid from abroad. Many towns and villages had barely functioning infrastructure, and in government offices, resources were so limited that even basic administrative work was often delayed or abandoned. Life was simple but hard, and people hoped that one day things would improve. But when oil companies exploring the Gulf of Guinea struck enormous resources offshore, that hope exploded into something bigger, a sense that the country might finally break free from poverty. Oil executives, foreign diplomats, contractors, and investors began flooding into Malabo. Helicopters passed across the coastline. Contracts thicker than textbooks were drafted overnight. The country suddenly felt like a frontier of opportunities where fortune could be made in a matter of months. The state revenue projections skyrocketed to levels no one had ever imagined. For a brief moment, many citizens believed that schools would be rebuilt, hospitals modernized, and roads finally paved. What they did not know was that oil wealth, instead of liberating the nation, would become the tool that cemented absolute power in the hands of one family. The revenue from oil did not flow into public institutions with transparency and oversight. Instead, it created new layers of secrecy. The government stopped releasing clear financial information, budgets became classified, and national income was treated almost like confidential military intelligence. Only a carefully selected inner circle around President Obiang understood the true scale of the country's earning. Even cabinet ministers outside that core were often information starved and powerless. Oil provided something even more dangerous than money: independence from the people. Before oil, the government at least needed some form of public support or external assistance to keep functioning. After oil, it no longer mattered what citizens thought, because the state no longer depended on taxes or public cooperation to survive. The discovery created a ruler who was financially untouchable. Massive revenues allowed Obiang to reward loyalists. It is no exaggeration to say that oil, instead of empowering the people, became the oxygen that kept an authoritarian system alive. Very soon, the wealth that could have transformed the country into one of Africa's most developed instead concentrated around the ruling family, forming a shadowy and unaccountable economic empire. And once a system like that is built, undoing it becomes almost impossible. The true extent of how the oil money was handled did not become widely known until a legal investigation in the early 2000s in the United States. Richest Bank, a historic financial institution in Washington, D.C., became the unlikely doorway through which the world saw part of Equatorial Guinea's financial practices. The bank had a reputation for managing accounts for diplomats and foreign leaders, so when unusually large deposits connected to Equatorial Guinea began flowing in, the bank initially treated it as normal business. But regulators later discovered that the transactions did not resemble standard government activity. Rather, they looked personal, informal, and intentionally opaque. When US investigators dug deeper, they uncovered something astonishing. The accounts containing enormous sums of oil revenue were registered not under national institutions or ministries, but under the names of individuals closely tied to the president. They included his wife, Constantia Mang, and his son, Gabriel Mbaga Obiang, among others. In practical terms, this meant that the money earned from the nation's oil fields was being held as though it belonged to a private household rather than a sovereign state. Transfers between accounts lacked detailed explanation. Large cash withdrawals were made without justification, and funds moved internationally with little oversight. The Senate's report shocked many observers. It provided rare, concrete evidence of a system that blended state finances with personal finances. Investigators concluded that there were virtually no internal controls governing how the ruling family assessed oil earnings. The revelation raised serious ethical and legal questions. How could a country with so many poor citizens have leaders holding massive sums abroad in personal accounts? Richest Bank eventually faced heavy penalties, and its reputation was severely damaged. The scandal contributed to the bank's closure, but while the bank collapsed under the weight of regulatory scrutiny, the political system in Equatorial Guinea remained unchanged. The ruling family denied wrongdoing, dismissed the findings, and continued operating in ways that kept true national earnings hidden from public view. The Richest Bank affair was important because it offered one of the first real windows into how the leadership managed national resources. It showed the world that oil wealth, instead of being administered through transparent state channels, had been absorbed into an informal financial network centered around the Obiang family. It also made people realize that the problem was not simply corruption. It was an entire political system that made corruption inevitable. After the rich banks revelation, more investigation emerged across the world, each showing how state money was spent illegally by people. Journalists, anti-corruption organizations, and foreign courts gradually pieced together a portrait of governance that functioned less like a modern state and more like a family-owned corporation. One of the most common patterns they uncovered involved major public works projects, highways, administrative buildings, conference centers, airports, and even new towns. On paper, these projects were framed as transformative national investments. In reality, the companies receiving the contracts were frequently controlled or secretly owned by senior members of the ruling family or their close allies. These companies would often charge inflated prices for construction and services, sometimes doubling or tripling what the actual cost should have been. The state paid the bills using oil revenue, and the profits quietly made their way back into the pockets of those who controlled the companies. As a result, even though billions were spent, the quality of infrastructure often did not match the investment. Some roads deteriorated quickly, buildings remained underused, and entire neighborhoods developed as showpieces rather than practical spaces meant to benefit the population. Transparency organizations repeatedly ranked Equatorial Guinea among the world's most corrupt countries. Reports described how billions of dollars entered the country's treasury, yet much of it vanished without accounting. International analysts noted that President Obiang accumulated substantial personal wealth, enough to place him among the world's richest heads of state, while public services remained weak and underfunded. Hospitals often lacked medicine, classrooms lacked supplies, and social services lagged far behind those of countries with much smaller budgets. The situation revealed a painful truth. The wealth did not fail to reach the people because there wasn't enough of it. It failed to reach them because the system was deliberately designed to benefit only a small group at the top. Oil became the foundation of a privileged lifestyle for the ruling elite, while many ordinary citizens continued to live the same lives they had lived before the oil boom, struggling, hoping, and waiting for change that never came. Among all the figures in the ruling family, no one attracted global attention than Teodoro Obiang Nguema, his son, who is popularly known as Teodorín. His public image became synonymous with extravagance, and over the years, he grew into the most visible symbol of how deeply personal wealth had been built for public resources. While holding various government positions such as Minister of Forestry, Minister of Agriculture, and eventually Vice President, Teodorín maintained a lifestyle that even billionaires would consider excessive. His official salary as a minister could not realistically support such spending.
The United Nations General Assembly was held in New York last month. During the UNGA meet, leaders from around the world were given a last chance to hash out pressing global actions. But for the son of President of Equatorial Guinea, it was the time to go around and flaunt his luxurious lifestyle when at least 70% of the country's population lives on less than $2 a day.
Yet, he owned luxury mansions in Los Angeles and Paris, a lavish estate in Malibu, fleets of exotic sport cars, private jets, boats, and collections of jewelry, designing clothes, and rare arts. For a long time, his life of excess went unquestioned by local authorities because he existed within a system that permitted and protected such behavior. But the outside world eventually took notice. International investigators and financial crime units in several countries began tracking his purchases after noticing the mismatch between his official earnings and the extravagant items he owned. The United States launched a major case that linked many of his assets to funds taken from public resources. As a result, the government seized his Malibu mansion, high-end cars, and valuable personal collections. France also conducted a thorough investigation, eventually convicting him in absentia and seizing his luxury Paris property. Switzerland joined the effort and confiscated thousands of high-end cars belonging to him. Despite these legal battles abroad, Teodorín remained one of the most powerful figures inside Equatorial Guinea. Instead of his influence diminishing, he rose through the ranks, eventually becoming vice president. This paradox, being under investigation abroad while holding high office at home, demonstrated how insulated the ruling family was from accountability. The international legal actions, however, provided undeniable evidence of how public money had fueled private opulence. They made clear that the problem wasn't just political authoritarianism. It was a systematic use of national resources to sustain personal luxury on a scale unimaginable to the ordinary citizen. The tragedy of Equatorial Guinea lies in deep contrast between its national wealth and the everyday life of its people. Despite generating billions of dollars from oil, the majority of citizens have seen little improvement in their living conditions. Many communities still struggle with unreliable access to clean water, limited healthcare, and poor educational facilities. Hospitals often lack essential equipment, medicines are frequently unavailable, and healthcare workers operate under challenging conditions. Education faces similar challenges, with classrooms overcrowded or under-resourced, and many children learning in facilities that have not been updated in decades. Infrastructure in the capital and certain urban areas may appear impressive at first glance, with modern buildings and well-lit roads. Yet, outside the main cities, many roads remain unpaved or poorly maintained, and access to basic services becomes increasingly difficult the farther one travels from the city center. Rural areas often feel disconnected, as if they are living in a different era from the polished image presented in the capital's showcase neighborhoods. Many families rely on subsistence farming, and unemployment remains high, especially among the youths. Freedom of expression also remains restricted. Political opponents face intimidation. Ordinary citizens fear openly criticizing the government, and civil society organizations operate under strict limitations. The environment of fear created during Macías' era never fully disappeared. It simply changed form. Instead of widespread brutality, the new system relied on surveillance, political pressure, and legal threats to maintain control. For many citizens, the promise of independence and oil wealth transformed into a long, silent wait for reforms that never came. This persistent inequality, the kind that exists in the shadow of enormous national wealth, remains one of the most painful aspects of Equatorial Guinea's modern history. Now, before I end, looking back at the entire story, from Francisco Macías' violent dictatorship to Teodoro Obiang's oil-fueled long rule, a powerful lesson emerges. Natural wealth alone does not guarantee national prosperity. A country can sit on oceans of oil, forests of valuable timber, and a coastline rich with opportunity. But if leadership lacks transparency, accountability, and integrity, those resources become instruments of oppression instead of engines of development. Equatorial Guinea's history is a vivid demonstration of what happens when political power concentrates within a single family. Under Macías, fear and terror were used to control the population, leaving scars that still linger today. Under Obiang, the system evolved into one sustained by money, patronage, and the constant flow of oil revenue. Both leaders relied on different tools, but their impact was similar: a silencing of the population, a diversion of national wealth, and the creation of a political structure where dissent was risky and loyalty was rewarded above merit. More than 5 decades after independence, the same extended family continues to dominate the nation's political and economic life. This is not just the story of one African nation. It is a broader warning about the dangers of unchecked power. It shows how easily public wealth can be privatized when institutions are weak, how authoritarianism can adapt to new circumstances, and how a nation's future can be shaped not by its resources, but by the character of those who manage them. The story of Equatorial Guinea is ultimately a call for accountability. It is a reminder that leadership must serve the people, not the other way around. Until genuine reforms emerge, until the wealth of the country become truly national wealth, and until power is separated from personal privilege, the cycle will continue, and generations of citizens will keep inheriting the consequences of a system that treats a nation like a family estate.